Okay, so last time I did a little bit of exploration using the Databot large language model. And I'd just like to kind of take some time to kind of evaluate and see how well it did. So we started out with this data set called NHANES. We did a little bit of cleaning of the data set. There were actually a number of duplicate rows. So we removed those duplicate rows and well, we basically got an N of about 5,200. So I was looking at the depression variable, and this is kind of stratified into three different categories. So the first is having no days of feeling depressed. The second is having several days of feeling depressed. And the last is having the most number of days of feeling depressed. I believe this is over a month. So you can see that these numbers are much smaller than the none category. So we do have to be careful in training an algorithm because these numbers are unbalanced. So if we wanted to try to train an algorithm to predict these, we have to make sure and do some sort of sampling strategy. But let's not worry about that right now. I want to take a quick look at some of the code that Databot generated to produce the crosstabs. So in general, I was pretty pleased to see that Databot was going to use a package called Janitor. It's one of my favorites for producing cross tables. I love, you can do these cross tables of the two different variables. So here is physically active and depressed. And then you can add more information. So you can add like totals, percentages, you can change the formatting, etc. So I just want to talk a little bit about, this is something that it did, and it was actually missing one thing. So it is trying to recode these variables. So basically it's trying to come up with a categorical variable for this days with physical health bad over a month. And so what it did was it took the numeric variable and it basically recoded it using a case when statement, which is what I would usually do. But one of the problems with this table, if we take a look at it, is that the categories aren't in order. So I would have added an extra mutate here into making this new category a variable a factor and provided it in order. So that's one. It's a bit of a nitpick, but again, in terms of making things easier, that is one area where it kind of fell down. So, we talked a little bit last time about kind of looking at the different categories. So this is the depression variable, and these are by physically active days. And you can see per week, and you can see that there do seem to be trends. So largely these numbers seem to be holding pretty constant if you look in terms of the percentages. This one I'm not super convinced because the percentages are all kind of within margin. I would argue the same thing about here. So I'm not exactly sure physical activity days are really that informative to my analysis, but I'd have to do some further downstream. I do think days of physical health bad. This is kind of hard to understand because of the order is in kind of the wrong order. But you can see that the 22 to 30 days, we have an elevated number of people with the most categories. So if you can see the percentages actually go up as we go up in terms of the number of physical days in the category. So this could potentially be another one. And then physically active. So if we look here, so we can see that there does appear to be a trend between like saying you're physically active or not physically active here. So this is 9.1%, and that is larger than saying if you are physically active. So these are two potential variables that could be very interesting in our analysis. So in general, I do agree with the key findings. Um, and I just wanted to kind of follow up with some last minute things that I did with working with Databot. So I asked Databot to ask permission before running any code. You might remember that I accidentally gave it permission to run code. I really am a strong believer in like reading before you run. So that's one thing that it can do. One of the things that it can also do is it can take what like our exploration and put it into a number of different files. So here, it generated what's called a databot.markdown file. So this has kind of the major findings and code. And then we've got it also generated an R file that has all of the code that we generated. So in general, I'm pretty happy with how Databot worked on this data set. I think, if I were going to train a machine learning algorithm, there'd be a lot more questions I would have before I would include other variables in the data. But that's it. Hopefully this was helpful. And that's it.